Jane Kurth is with us, Trends in Boutique Fitness. Jane, let's finish the thread. We ran out of time last segment about the recovery with your injury, and you had a couple quick things for listeners out there just to kind of keep in mind. We're not preaching, everybody. We're coming. This is straight from us because we've been there and we've gone through this, and Jane has gone through this. What would you like to add on to the end of that? And then we'll start talking a little more on the recovery side of boutique fitness. Go right ahead, please.
Yeah, Tom, I think it's essential for people who are recovering from an injury to realize that they're still in recovery and not to overdo it when they're feeling better, to jump back in full force. You cannot, your body can't do that. And you're just going to either make that injury worse or create a new injury, which you don't want. Safety is the most important thing. I also want to encourage the listeners that if they're recovering from an injury, and let's say they're at the gym lifting some weights, don't feel like you're in competition with anybody else. I struggle with that all the time. I'll go in Pilates class and I'm like, okay, I've got to be able to do this because the girl next to me is doing it great. I encourage you to stay away from that. Know when to modify. It's not a bad thing.
That's right. That's absolutely right. You know, one of the reasons I still train at the university when I'm in Michigan, which is a good chunk of our months, is because I want to remind myself that as one of the older, if not the oldest, I'm right up there. There's only a few of us there. Well, because it's a college, it's a university.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so I've had to dial back my work, and it's just a good check to know that you can still have great workouts and you don't have to be what you were doing 25, 30 years ago, because
exactly.
And what Jane is saying, we have both been through, you start feeling better, especially with like a lower body injury or a back injury. When you start feeling better and you're just so happy you're feeling better, you go out and you do something, and then boom, you're knocked back on the couch. Neither one of us as fitness professionals, neither one of us want to see that happen for you. All right. So good segue, jumping off point here for the rest of the program, everybody. When Jane wants to talk about, and I want to discuss this with her as well, on the increase in wellness services. We're going to spend the bulk of the rest of the show talking about this because, well, Jane, you can explain it, you know, in the big grasp here. Take some time here in this segment to kind of lay it out. You know this industry really well. You've seen the trends. You do the studies. Go right ahead, please. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, you know, Tom, one of our previous talks together, we talked about the Blue Zone communities and where people live a high quality of life into their 90s and 100s. And if you haven't seen it, there's a great Netflix documentary, for a 4 or 5 part series on the Blue Zones, and it's excellent. It's very good. But that, I think the wellness concept, that it's not just physical fitness. There's our emotional health. And I love, you told me about Dr. Peter Attia book, and it's a phenomenal book. But in it, he says, if we, this was in the introduction, I thought, what if we work out and do great things and ignore our emotional well-being? You know, then it kind of goes to waste. So we want to look at the whole person, the whole area of wellness, and include all the parts. And I think the fitness community is really beginning to realize that.
It's taken a little while for things to catch up, but like I mentioned, and I've said a couple of times during this episode, Jane Kurth, our guest today, everybody, talking about trends in fitness and the boutique industry and fitness, because that's really where the emphasis is going, is very targeted work, targeted recovery. But it really comes down to the tech. It comes down to how much more knowledge that we have. Again, as I mentioned, talking about Dr. Langman.
Right.
Yes, last week's interview with the protein expert, they just, as we were younger, us younger baby boomers, we did not have that tech that they have now, that our young people have. And that's the cool thing about what we do, Jane, is we get to collaborate with the young people like your staff and your son and all of these younger people, all these trainers that you have. I get to do the same thing with the college students, as I was mentioning. It really helps keep us fresh and on top of our games, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It really does. And I want to encourage the listeners to embrace technology. I know a lot of people fear it if you're not under 30, or under 40, but embrace it. Like I mentioned earlier, I wear this Aura ring. There are several recovery devices, but the two that are the most popular are the Aura ring and the Whoop band. And I wear an Apple Watch, and my Apple Watch every day lets me know if I hit my goals. Well, these are preset goals that it's testing me on. It doesn't take into account if, say, when I would have a COVID vaccine, I would run a low grade fever during the night. And the next day, the Aura Ring app would tell me your body temperature was elevated, your resting heart rate was higher than normal. You need to rest today. But if I listen to my Apple Watch, which Chris calls them the rings of shame, because they shame you if you don't complete those rings, you can't rely on that. There are days you need to recover, and professional athletes are finding that out now. And the Whoop band has added into it strain. So when you do resistance training, it tracks that. And my Aura Ring now has implemented daytime stress. So I can look at my chart, and it's based on heart rate and heart rate variability to know whether I'm relaxed, restored, engaged, or stressed.